Welcome to the Activate World podcast, a series on how business leaders have more power to solve societal issues than any elected official. We explore business activism with substance and depth of thought. We're excited today to have Ben Brown with us. He's the founder of the Association of Young Americans. Ben, welcome to Activate World.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Just to begin, give us a snapshot of your background and what led you to start this organization.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Association of Young Americans. We are a membership organization working to insert the voices of the 80 million Americans between 18 and 35 into everyday politics and working to reclaim lobbying as a tool that works on behalf of young people. Everyone has lobbyists, and for so long, young people have not. It's an extremely important part of the political process, and AYA is organizing young Americans to support lobbyists that work on our behalf. Even though Association of Young Americans is only about 2 years old, I have been thinking about it for about 8 years. My background is in management consulting and energy. I studied physics in undergrad and then went to work at a couple of different places doing management consulting focused on clean tech, startups, often helping very, very big companies, Fortune 500s, Fortune 100s, think about how to access innovation outside of their four walls. And then at this point, maybe 6 years ago, I read an article when I was doing management consulting, by a guy named Matt Miller, and it was a laundry list of issues facing young people. Student debt, climate change, Social Security, the list went on. And at the end of the article, Matt Miller related an anecdote from when he was in his 20s, in the mid-90s, interviewing then Senator Alan Simpson. And he said, Senator Simpson, how can we solve all of these issues? And the senator said, nothing will happen until you can walk into my office and say, I'm with the American Association of Young People, and we have 30 million members. And I thought, wow, that is powerful. And for years, I just could not get that idea out of my head. And then 2.5 years ago, it was really starting to kind of eat me up inside and keep me up at night. And I launched AYA within a couple months.
Was there a specific event that led you to start this? Or was it just if not now, when kind of thing?
Yeah, it was more of a if not now, when. I always thought of Association of Young Americans as being kind of the opposite of get out the vote programs. Literally hundreds of millions of dollars was spent on getting young people to register to vote and ultimately show up and vote. And unfortunately, all of that energy and all that focus disappears right after the election. Millennials voted in the highest number percentage-wise in midterms just about ever. Still quite a far ways to go, but certainly a step in the right direction. But after the election, and historically, the same is true after elections, a lot of that energy, a lot of that focus goes away, and that's when all the work really starts. Right after the election is when policies and legislation has actually been written about the things that we care about. And so it's so important to be involved in those conversations. And historically, young people just have not. And so I always thought of Association of Young Americans as the organization working on behalf of young people on the days in between election days.
Since 2016, walk us through some of the key milestones that you've achieved with the Association of Young Americans.
Yeah, so some of the most exciting to me are passing the 10,000 member mark, which we did mid this summer. And we're actually now creeping up to 13,000 members. But even before that, it was hiring our very first lobbyist this spring, which was very exciting. The whole purpose of AYA is to organize young people to support lobbyists that work on our behalf. And so we hired a really amazing young woman in DC to work on behalf of our members and focus on higher education, affordability, and accessibility issues. And before that, I was actually really excited to announce a couple of the corporate partners that we have offering our members access to discounts last summer, including Lyft and Megabus, Brandless, and a couple other really amazing companies that I'm really proud to work with.
What's the mix of social media presence versus the in-person presence?
Yeah, so we have historically been very focused on the digital piece, which, as you can imagine, is really a great way for us to get our message out and get in front of people who we think will be interested in learning about us. That being said, we are doing more and more kind of in-person stuff by the month, and are planning to do much more next year. Actually, this past September, we launched our first ambassador program with about 10 folks all over the country acting as kind of AYA evangelists, if you will. Many of whom were on college campuses, but several of whom were not. But they volunteered. They went through a brief training, and then kind of took the message of AYA, this idea of continuous engagement and organized young people, to back into their communities. And we plan to actually do another round of recruitment training for that ambassador program this January.
Give us an example of one of the lobbyists you were excited to be working with.
We are working with a young woman named Allie Bernstein, who works at a very small group called Bernstein Associates. And Allie is an expert. She's been a lobbyist for many years, focused on education, in communicating complex legislation and kind of converting it into layman's terms, what it actually means for a student debt borrower, for example. She's an absolute expert in navigating kind of the politics of the Hill and organizing and being a part of different coalitions. And so she was really a home run in terms of kind of the perfect partner to help us get started in the lobbying space.
On your website, there's 4 issues you highlight. I'd like to walk through each and get your insights on what you'd like either the president or Congress to do around each of those issues. The first one is student debt.
Yeah. So first of all, all of these issues, all of the problems facing young people are bipartisan. And Association of Young Americans is bipartisan. We don't support candidates. We support policies that are good for young people. And so when we think about student debt in higher education, right, we have to look at the problem as a whole, right? $1.4 trillion in student loan debt. It has skyrocketed in the last 15 years for a number of different reasons, but it's affecting 44 million borrowers, many of whom, by the way, are not actually young people. And it's really simple. College costs too much and students get too little. And so we need to figure out a way to rebalance the equation, whether it's increasing investment in higher education at the state and federal level, or helping students refinance their loans at lower interest rates. And also, I'll mention that student loans are virtually impossible to discharge through bankruptcy, which was not the case 20 years ago. And I think we need to revisit that option as well.
Then one that's been in the news a lot lately, climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. So, over the last weeks, we've seen the devastating effects of climate change in California, in the Camp Fires, and the tragedy that happens if we don't take it seriously. Climate change is not snap your fingers and see the problem. It's slow, but it's happening. And the vast majority of young people believe it is happening, and it's because we can see the effects of it. We're going to be here for another 80 years, and so we need to really think about long-term problems, and climate change is definitely the key long-term problem. Young people are going to have to live on this planet for a while, so Association of Young Americans is fighting to ensure that we have clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, and clean land to live on.
Campaign finance was another issue listed on your site.
Yeah, so we look at what we have kind of dubbed political equality, which has to do with it's really a bucket term for anything that has to do with access to democracy. So campaign finance, gerrymandering, voting rights. And at the end of the day, politics shouldn't be only for those who can afford it. Equality means equal say, and it's important that everyone has the same access to engaging with democracy as kind of a fundamental rule of how things should work.
Then the last issue was criminal justice.
Yeah, so this is a huge issue. Again, more intergenerational than some might expect, but the U.S. is the world's leader in incarceration. It destroys families, communities. It has an enormous negative economic impact on the U.S. economy, and it disproportionately affects people of color. And frankly, it's time for reform.
An issue that seems to be missing is gun control, especially with the Parkland students. Is that something you're looking at, or is it already being handled by other groups?
It's a little bit of both. So we actually did do a bit of work on gun safety, and we kind of bucket that within our criminal justice portfolio. But the students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas are the most inspirational group of young people I think I've ever seen in my life, and they have elevated the issue of gun safety to a place where it has not ever been. And for that, I'm very proud and excited for them. And they are owning that conversation, and as they should. And Association of Young Americans is here to support them however they need it.
How do you view the emerging trend of employee activism?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's absolutely amazing. And for all the flack that millennials get for killing industries, this focus and devotion to values in the workplace is a strictly new millennial young person concept. And I think it is absolutely here to stay. And I'm proud as a young person to take ownership over that. There were, hundreds, thousands maybe of Google employees walked out over how the company handled some sexual assault allegations. They were upset when Google was vying for some Pentagon contracts, and it's not just Google. It's all sorts of tech and non-tech companies too. When right after Trump was inaugurated and he signed his series of immigration executive orders, we were seeing commercials on everything from cars and beer about immigration. So it really is everywhere. And business leaders are taking a stand on issues because they know that consumers and maybe even more importantly, employees want to see them take a stand, because it's no longer just about working for a company and taking a paycheck home. It's about working for a company that aligns with your values and vision for the future. And again, I'll say it again, that is a purely new millennial addition to the corporate world, and I'm very proud to see it.
Yeah, one of my working theories around that is government has shown their almost inability to solve problems. Business leaders are stepping in to fill that void. How do you see this business versus government tension play out as it relates to solving some of these problems that are very central not only to millennials, but to many other generations as well?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I think that theory could 100% be right. People don't often look to politics or politicians to solve problems. And that's, I think, part of the reason why young people have been so disengaged with voting and politics, is because it doesn't feel like they're listening. And then you look at kind of how business has changed over the last 10, 15 years, even 20 years. It used to be that you go buy a shirt and that's kind of the end of your transaction. But now with the advent of social media, people, especially young people, are really looking at companies to deliver value beyond just that initial transaction, right? You're welcoming brands into your life to be there with you consistently. And so as young people, I think, have maybe started to look away from politics as a place for solutions, business and companies and brands have actually increased their relationship with you.
Is AYA working with business leaders around these issues too?
Yeah, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we work with companies that align with our values and vision for the future, to offer members discount, and we're very selective about who we work with. One of the partners, coming off the heels of the election, that I'm really proud to be working with, which offers AYA members discounts, is Lyft. Lyft, before the election, announced that they were going to give free and reduced rides to the polls, costing them millions of dollars, but they knew that one of the key barriers for people to get to the polls was transportation, and making a plan to get to the polls. And so I was very proud to see them do that, and proud to work with them every day.
How do you fund your work with lobbyists and grow your presence within this generation?
We have 13,000 members. Many members are free members, but members can also contribute as little as $3 a month, a cup of coffee a month, to support their lobbyists. And we have a lot of members who are paying. Some pay as little as $3 a month. Some choose to pay $15 or $20 a month. And that is the money that keeps our lights on and supports our lobbyists. And we've also been lucky to receive some grant money as well.
Yeah, I saw that. One of the grants came from the AARP, correct?
That is right. Yeah, exactly. And we actually worked with them a little bit more this summer and fall, launching what was called the 3-Generation Survey, interviewing and surveying millennials, boomers, and Gen Xers about all sorts of things.
That's a great example of a cross-generational partnership.
Yeah, exactly.
To wrap up, what's your big hope for the new year as it relates to your association?
My biggest hope is that Association of Young Americans, kind of my dream is that, and plan is that Association of Young Americans, gets millions of young members. I don't think we'll get millions of members next year. It's possible. But my hope for next year is that we can harness the enthusiasm amongst young people that we saw in the election and convert it into consistent engagement when policies are actually being changed.
For that age group from 18 to 35, what would you say is the biggest challenge in the new year ahead?
Fighting through the noise and finding the truth and understanding how that truth affects them. One of the reasons actually that Association of Young Americans launched our daily newsletter about different issues is because there is so much news and noise out there, and it's really hard to understand where the things that are affecting your lives are happening, and staying up to date on that news.
How can people engage with you? What's the best way to get connected and join?
Go to our website, joinaya.com, to learn more about us. Sign up for our newsletter, sign up to be a member, contribute to support your lobbyists. And also, follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and stay up to date on what we're up to and the news.
That's great. I hope our listeners, if they're in that age group, definitely do that. As you point out, and as Senator Simpson highlighted, numbers matter. The more you can organize and make your voice heard through AYA, the better off you'll be.
Absolutely.
Well, Ben, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk with you, and what you're doing is so essential for our future. I think our young business leaders and leaders in general need to engage and work with you to solve some of these big policy challenges.
Thank you so much.
Listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Which of AYA's key issues do you think has the most potential for progress? If you're 18 to 35, what are the issues that you think are most important? Send your perspective to me at john@activateworld.com. That's John without an H, Jon @activateworld.com. Write it out or record it. Send it my way. We want to hear and share your thoughts. Be sure to tell your friends and colleagues about the Activate World podcast. Encourage them to subscribe, listen, and share from their favorite podcast platform: Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and others. Let us know how we're doing by leaving a review. Your reviews mean a lot to us. Activate World is a team endeavor. Special thanks to Kayla Waldstein and Kent Nutt. Music by Jason Goodyear. For Activate World, I'm John Mertz.